to talk about a female that has been successful, a woman that has been successful in engineering or science in the history of the world. And in this case, I chose Mary Golda Ross. She was the first Native American in aerospace, an aerospace engineer, and she worked for Lockheed Martin. And for the longest time, people would interview her, and she would say that, "Oh, I just was a paper pusher," or something like that, because what she was working on was super secret. But if you Google her, she was amazing. All right, the presentation it's a variation on decisions behind the design, which is what I already presented at NI Week a couple of years ago. You can watch the video online on our YouTube channel. But I did a little bit of variation on that based on some discussions Justin and John Locanis and other people from the user group meeting we had before last week. So hopefully I'm touching everybody's request. Like I said, my name is Fabiola De la Cueva, and I founded Delacor. Delacor started around 2006. And we help customers develop successful applications with LabVIEW and develop custom measurement hardware. That's a part that not a lot of people know, but we also, just like we do consulting in software, we do consulting for hardware. We specialize in working with teams to implement LabVIEW best practices, and a lot of software engineering. We work with a lot of teams that are going from the single developer to all of a sudden having a team, and they don't know how to work as a team. So that's one thing that we can do. And we have customers all over the world. We're an alliance partner, and we have been recently approved as a center of excellence as well. So I already mentioned this. Some of our products are the DQMH, which is what I'm going to be talking about, and it won LabVIEW Tools Network Product of the Year in 2016. The locking amplifier is also available via the LabVIEW Tools Network. And then we have 3 other products that we sell directly to our customers. Those you do need to inquire directly if you want to learn more about them. There's a test sequencer, configuration manager, and some software engineering tools. The software engineering tools are basically custom BI analyzer tests, a springboard for your style guidelines, and a code review process. And the other 2 are based on DQMH. So Delacor is a small company. But we have, what happened? I'm seeing several messages there. So we good?
Yes, we're good. Don't worry about the chat. I'll let you know if something bad happens.
Okay. So Delacor is a small company in Austin, Texas. And, you know, people ask me, why don't you hire more people? Why don't you grow and make, you know, the next Averna or the next Cornride? And the reality is that I really enjoy getting my hands dirty and continue to enjoy doing code reviews and working on the architecture of DQMH and other projects. So instead, what we did is we created this group of DQMH trusted advisors. There are other companies that are really proficient in DQMH. We call them DQMH trusted advisors because the main thing is they're going to advise you whether DQMH is the right tool, the right framework for your company or not. Wiring in Software is in Australia, StudioBots is in Canada, SAS Workshops is in Denver, Wobble Lab is in France, Hamper Software Engineering is in Germany, and Neosoft is in Canada. So we have almost all the areas of the world covered there. And we have audited these companies, and we know they know how to apply best practices. And when they do deviate from what we consider is the best way to use DQMH, we make sure that they understand the trade-offs and why they're doing it that way. So they're audited, they follow best practices, have understanding of DQMH. Everybody in the company has the DQMH framework badge. If you're not familiar with badges, if you go to ni.com/badge, it's basically like open book exam that you can take to figure out what your LabVIEW level is in different areas. It is very good if you're starting with a team and you want to know where everybody's at, but it's also a good way of doing a self-assessment. And because it's open book, you can, go open LabVIEW, try things. We help develop the questions for DQMH, and I warn you, several questions. We actually made them, so you actually have to open LabVIEW and run it, otherwise you cannot answer the questions. So, and it's just a way of discovering new things. And I see that Enrique is nodding his head because I think you had to run LabVIEW when you were doing this. I also wanted to mention another alliance, and that's the SH workshops. That stands for Delacor, SSDC, and Handful Software, which are the names of the companies of the founders. And that will be Steve Watts, Jörg Hampel, and Brian Powell join us at the beginning of this year, because we were going to start doing more in-person workshops. Seems like we chose the wrong year to do on-site workshops. So we are starting to do some stuff online. And our main thing is we have more than 20 years of experience, each of us, and we have realized through our discussions that we agree on the foundational elements of some good practices in software engineering, but our implementation differs. And we like to go and try to figure why that is. And I feel like that's why we can help other teams, because we can tell them, okay, for your team and what you're trying to do, Steve's way is probably going to be the best, but we can also explain what other alternatives there are. Anyhow, so that's like a quick, very long, actually, 10-minute introduction as to who I am and which groups I'm related to. So let me go check on my poll here, see how many people have answered, so I get an idea of the audience. Are there any questions so far? Did everybody just jump ship already? All right, so.
I was gonna say, I feel better that we were expected to run LabVIEW for some of those questions.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Some of them were really hard. It's like, am I supposed to know this?
Yeah. This is why I mentioned these things, and that was kind of like the idea, is they wanted to make it possible for people not only to do a self-assessment, like I said, but also an opportunity to learn new things. So that's why. Okay, let me see. It's not refreshing, and I'm sure that at least one person already answered, right? Because it's showing me 0 responses, and I don't believe it. So
yeah, at least one person has
not the
submitted
survey,
a
by the way.
Okay. What was that? I think 2 people talked at the same time.
Sorry. This is Jason with Blue Origin. I was unable to fill out the survey. It might have something to do with the firewall I work, but I wasn't able to get in.
Okay, so but those are the questions. So do you are you familiar with producer consumer, with an IQMH project template, user events, DQMH? Yes. For those that couldn't answer.
We can do a hand raise in Teams if you want.
Okay, let me load it and just see for the people that have already done it. Show file location. Hi. This has worked really well in other user groups, but you know how this is. All right, here we go. Responses. Yay. Okay, 11 people replied. How many people are in?
We have 29 people in the meeting right now.
Okay. All right, so we have like at least 5 people that don't know what DQMH is. So I'm definitely going to do a little bit more of an introduction. 2 people don't know what an IQMH is, or have heard about it but don't know it. Okay. I'm not gonna. Somebody asked what will be new in DQMH 6. We're not working on DQMH 6, but we're working on DQMH 5.1. So I am gonna mention some stuff that it's gonna be there. All right. So it does seem by the responses that I do need to go into a little bit of an intro. So that's good. So what is DQMH? It stands for Delacor Queue Message Handler. So if you can see on my shirt, like which size? That's the name of my company, Delacor. So that's why it's called the Delacor Queue Message Handler. For those of you who have taken the Advanced Architectures in LabVIEW course, there is a queue-driven message handler on that course. And I didn't realize that the letters were so similar, because at the beginning we were calling it the Delacor QMH. But then DQMH caught on, and it was until like the following time that I was teaching, I was like, oh, there's going to be some confusion on this. But the intention when we did it was we wanted it to be accessible to CLDs, but that yet LabVIEW beginners could participate on the projects as well. Expands on the NIQMH by providing safe event-based message handling. Includes productivity, efficiency, code generation, and testing tools. And our whole idea was to enhance the developer experience. The biggest compliment you can give me is to tell me that you smile when you use DQMH. And I have had people tell me that. And when I hear that, it's like, okay, we are right? That was one of the things that we wanted to do. It uses object-oriented programming, but it doesn't require that you understand it, although you can use it also to extend it. Works with testing. Each created module has a public API tester, and some of the scripting tools are driving you towards our philosophy of how code should be done. So we do a lot of, so somebody said that they do this one, good. Each module has its API tester, so the scripting tools can guide you through our philosophy, which is think about how you're going to be testing before you start coding. And actually, when you create events, the first thing that comes on your face is the tester. It supports multiple instances. Now, I know that the Seattle LabVIEW Users Group meeting has a lot of very experienced architects. And sometimes experienced architects dismiss DQMH because they already have their own architectures. And DQMH originally was done so we could show others how we could automate their own frameworks. And then what it started happening is people would start seeing DQMH and they would be like, forget about my framework. I want to use DQMH. But one thing I want to make very clear is we made DQMH so it could be extended and it could be modified. And you can create your own custom modules. To the extreme that even we had a customer that created Pulse Crazy module that I'll show you later if we have time, where he completely removed the message handling loop. And the tools and everything still work. So you can go to a very crazy level of customization to make it work more to like what you expect. We did it to make it look like the NIQMH because that was a way to ensure that if somebody called NI support, they could help or understand the code. One of the first DQMH developers, a person that used DQMH, he called an AE, and the AE, the first thing that the AE said is like, this is very clean code. and the AE was really, really happy to help the customer. And the customer called me immediately. He was like, okay, you were not kidding. They were able to help me right away. And I was like, see, I told you, this is why I don't want to be answering questions on how to, DQ or stuff like that. I want to be answering questions more on the architecture. All right, it is free. If you need a special license, because there are certain companies that require, that their legal team requires a specific type of licenses, please do contact us. We have no problem on charging you for a free project, for a free product. So if you need a custom license, of course, the cost will depend on how much we need to involve our lawyers. But feel free to give us a call if you need a custom license. But if not, it's free. The only thing we ask for is that in your documentation or in the about, you mention that you use DQMH. All right, we're good. Okay. So how to learn DQMH? So you can go to the videos. There is a section on our documentation, and let me show you that because I had it prepared here. If you go to Delacor.com and go to the documentation for DQMH, we added for 5.0 how to learn DQMH. And we basically put 3 different paths depending on how you learn and what you're going to be using DQMH for. If you're okay with a very generic project, this is the learning path. If you are that type of people that has to use something that actually does something, we have the continuous measurement and logging example, so you can learn from that. And the third path is if you don't care about creating DQMH modules, but you know that you're going to be using DQMH modules that somebody else created, then you can go for the path number 3. And if you're only going to be using DQMH modules with testend, then you can go for path number 4. There's also LED online on site. And there are some the videos from that we have, and there's also Tom's LabVIEW Adventure. That is a really good series. He doesn't speak as fast as I do, so it's probably easier to understand him, although he does have a British accent. So there's that. All right. But I think that was one thing, is we kept getting emails about, hey, I've seen your videos, I've seen the blog post, I've seen the documentation. Do you have anything else? And I was like, I don't know what else to give. So anyway, I mentioned the framework, the badge already. There are 2 badges for frameworks. There's the active framework and the DQMH. So when people ask me, you know, but it doesn't ship with an I, I'm like, but it is recognized by an I as being a popular framework, enough to be the other badge that NI gives. All right, and then lastly, the other way you can have to learn this is the LabVIEW Graphical Programming 5th edition that I co-author with Richard Jennings. There's a whole chapter on frameworks, and I cover both active framework and DQMH. So this year was supposed to be the book tour. This was the other thing that we picked the wrong year to do a book tour. But hopefully after this is done, we can resume that and actually do the book tour. All right. Okay. Before and I removed the reviews, we had 24 5-star reviews. We were the only toolkit that had all 5 stars. We'll have to figure out how to do it now for people to put reviews on VI Package Manager. Okay. So that's singing our praises and how awesome we are, how awesome DQMH is. Now we're going to do a quick NIQMH review. For those of you, you said that we could do shows of hands. I don't know how many people are familiar with these block diagram. How do they do shows of hands? Matt, I think you're muted because I see your mouth moving, but I don't hear you. Nope, I don't hear you. All right, anyway.
There we go. There's a raise your hand button at the top. And if you go to the participants list, or yeah, the participants list, it should show like a hand icon next to people.
Okay, show participants. Okay. All right, so raise your hands if you're familiar with this block diagram, I guess.
I raised my hand since I wrote it.
All right. Okay, well, so that's the NIQ message handler block diagram, and I'm going to do a very quick, so this is less than 2 minutes, so you guys better pay attention because this is going to be, don't worry about raising your hand, it's okay. We'll move on. All right, ready? Here we go. So let me make sure I block the sound. All right, so when you go to the getting started and you create a project, you have the option of creating the NIQMH. That has an event handling loop that's going to handle any end user interactions with the front panel. And then you have a message handling loop that is going to handle the queued messages that come from the top loop that I showed you earlier. All right, then we look at the local data is going to store in a cluster, and that's in a chief register, and it's available on your message cases. You have a queue that's going to hold the messages to be handled by the message handling loop. And you dequeue what is going to be the next message to be handled by the message handling loop with that VI. And you have 2 error handlers that are going to enqueue error messages if there's an error on the event handling loop or an error on the message handling loop. And both loops end up being handling their errors in that error case. So how does it stop? Either because you try to close the front panel, and in that case, we discard and we enqueue the confirm quit. In later versions, oh, well, that one still does confirm quit. So then the DQ would DQ the confirm quit. That will send as priority message the exit. So that means that it gets enqueue at the front of the queue. And then the DQer would DQ the exit, and that would send you to the case that says exit. We fire the user event to stop. We also stop the loop in the bottom. And then the event handling loop on the top will do it. On the left there, that's where we create. That's where we register for the event. And that's where we handle it in the event handling loop. And that's where we stop the event handling loop on the top. All right. And before we leave, we make sure we release our queue and we destroy all the events. All right. Any questions about that? No, no questions? No? Ay, what did I do? Okay, am I still on the right place? Yes, I don't know what I did. It moved things around on me. All right, so any questions, Darren?
No, nothing for you. Keep on going.
All right, so why do I have onions? No, it's not that I'm gonna make you cry. Maybe I already started making you cry, I don't know. It was more because of the layers. So there is, when you have the DQMH project template that gets installed with DQMH, there are different layers. There's a layer where you have a high level project description. There's an application. We included an actual application that can be built into an executable. We have then the main BI. And the main concepts cover our request events and broadcast events. This video would last 8 minutes. So I'm going to skip it for the sake of time. But you can find this video, and I guess I can, let me do escape and I'll copy it so you guys can have it on the chat. It's a video that includes all the steps that I just described and goes step by step on the things. You can watch it later. Okay. All right. So from current slide. Okay. So this is a graph that we put together. It's a very informal, probably very biased graph, but we put it together based on discussions we had with our customers. And we decided that there were two axes, learning curve and complexity. So the state machine is the least complex and the faster to learn. Producer consumer will be next. Queue message handler will be next. Private and public events, it's a framework that Justin Gores presented on CLA Summit of 2011 and on NI Week of 2012, and then actor framework. So what we did is we took the one from Justin Gores, we added scripting tools for creating the user events. And then to reduce the learning curve, we changed the terminology because request and broadcast kind of infer direction, where private and public events were really hard to understand because the private events were wrapped by public VIs and the public events were wrapped by private VIs. So that would get very confusing pretty quickly. Also, the private and public events use the JKI state machine. And we decided to go with the Q message and the NI QMH again, because it was an architecture that was more familiar by people. And also the fact that we had two loops makes it where we can put each DQMH module to sleep. All right. And this is the part that Stephen and Alan don't really like, that we still think that actor framework is up there. We can have that discussion another day. All right, so if we do a comparison between DQMH and NIQMH, let me make sure that I mute this thing. Okay, so on the left we have the DQMH and on the right we have the NIQMH. So that's the NIQMH main. This is what the left looks like. If we bring in what the DQMH looks like, we have an initialization. Our queue is grabbed by a class. The NIQMH, the message queue is unique for each project, where ours is on the palette. The NIQMH main has a creation for the user event. We have another, we have broadcast and events that are created for the interprocess communication where the NIQMH only uses the event to stop the upper loop. All right, one more comparison here. All internal and external messages are DQ'd in the same place. So there's no way of knowing where the messages are external. Where in DQMH, any external messages, whether they were sent via the GUI or whether they were sent via events fire outside the DQMH modules, all of the external messages are handled on the event handling loop. And the message handling loop only manages internal communication. So if we were to summarize it, the DQMH module message queue is private, where the NIQ message handler parallel loops can access other loops queues, which can become crazy when you're trying to do troubleshooting. The DQMH is extensible via user events. And the NIQ message handler, it's moderately extensive. You add new loops. There's a dynamic number of parallel tasks. There was a question that some of the people that I talked to last week before, while we were planning this user group meeting, were asking about, could we use channels? And the reason we cannot use channels is that we can dynamically decide how many modules we're going to launch at runtime. And with channels, you have to specify your number of origins and syncs and development time. So that's one of the reasons why we couldn't. We could potentially use the channel within a DQMH module itself just for the queue. But there's that option. And all right, so that was like a quick, really super quick introduction to DQMH. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to show you what a DQMH module looks like. No questions?
None in the chat right now.
Okay. Anybody wants to jump on the microphone and be like, Fabiola, you're going super fast. I don't understand a thing. No? No takers? All right. Okay. So a DQMH module is a project library, and it has a main BI, a public API with requests. This is what people, other modules are going to be using. And it also comes with a test, an API tester. And an API tester is always going to allow you to see how is it that I can run a new module, show its module panel, hide its module panel. One thing that we all really like is that you can show the block diagram. So that allows you to probe things as things are running. In this particular case, we're just generating a random number. And I can have multiple instances. Where this comes really handy is I can decide to send a message to only one of those instances. So I can show the module panel of minion number 3. And I could then go and check the block diagram of just that minion, that clonable module. This is one thing that it's hard to do with re-entrant BIs. So DQMH does that out of the box. The things that a DQMH module already has from out of the box is the show panel, hide panel, stop module, show diagram. These generate random number would be an example of an event that you generate. So if I want to add a new DQMH module, I go to DQMH, add new module, add new DQMH module, give it a name. Seattle is not going to be Pulse Crazy module. This is one of the things that we added, that it remembers what's the last type of DQMH module that you use. I'm going to create a singleton. Now, notice when you install DQMH, you only get singleton and clonable. Notice that I have a lot more stuffs here. That means that I have created other templates, and this is where you could create your own templates. I'm going to include the do something events, and let's go and create it. So I want to show you, that out of the box is creating that library, the API tester, and then I'm just going to create an event, just so we can see how that works. All right, so like I mentioned, it created a library, which is the Seattle library, and then it created the test Seattle API. So out of the box, this one looks a little bit different because it's a singleton, so there's only a single instance of it. And I can send messages, Seattle tester sent, do something, test do something else. I can simulate errors. Here's the error, simulate another error, and I can stop the module. Close the API tester. If I want to add a new event, I would go to Tools, Delacor, DQMH event, create new DQMH event. I'm going to select my module. It's going to be the Seattle module. I'm going to create a request, and the name of the request is going to be change front panel color. For the people that want to do their own architectures, you can choose a different enqueuer. So if you have created your own class, your own child class for the queue, and you want to create your own enqueuer, you can specify where that is located at. And change front panel color. Okay, so on the event arguments window, people have asked, why is it that we made it not a VI that it's actually running, but an editable VI? And that's so we can use quick draw. So I'm going to put a color box and front panel color. Anything that I choose to be the default stuff here. So if I make these operation, where is the make current value default? Make current value default. There we go. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to create OK. So the scripting tools are going to go and open the module itself and create the request VI and everything I need. As I mentioned in the introduction, the very first VI that jumps at my face is the API tester. So it's telling me, okay, Fab, you're about to implement something. How are you going to test it? There are information here. It says position the new test change front panel color button appropriately on the front panel. Yeah, because that's kind of not a good place to put it. So let's just put it over here for now. And then it says delete this label when you're done. And then I have to actually put my control there. Notice that the front panel color control kept all the attributes that it had. So if you want to add things like caption and description and tip and help and all that to your argument, you can do that on the arguments window, and it's going to be kept as part of the control. All right, so I have everything ready. I can delete this label. Of course, if I run it now, this is not going to work because I haven't implemented the code yet. Notice what it did for me. It added an event case, right? That event case was created for me. It created the enqueue of the change from panel color. It created the change from panel color in the message cases. And here I have another instructions on what to do. So I am going to do a property node and link it to my pane. Look at the color, change to right, and then wire that to that. Okay, so let's see if this works. So if I run the tester, start module, show module panel, change from panel color, ta-da! Okay, so not only I created it, but I also can test it right away. Of course, anytime you show people how to do these things, they have to go for the magenta. So I'll oblige. So the API tester is not only helping me test things, but it also helps me to have running documentation of my code. If I give these to Michael or to Enrique, they can, because they're familiar with DQMH, they know, oh, how do I know how to start this module? Find terminal, I just need to call this code. Hey, how do I know to change the front panel color? Find terminal, I just need to call this VI. So these becomes also like example code that I can then use to call my code. All right. Any questions about that before I go into the root loop issue and jump like 5 levels of complexity here? Are we doing on the questions over there, Darren?
I've been answering a couple of questions. I don't think there are any outstanding questions, so
Okay.
I think we're good to proceed.
Okay. Anybody wants to jump on the microphone, or are we good? Yeah. All right. So let me show you what I have here. I have created 2 projects. One on LabVIEW. Okay. I discovered this accidentally with VI Package Manager. Turns out that if I select this project that is on 2019, it shows 2019 here. If I click on LabVIEW 2020, it shows 2020 here. All right.
I recently discovered that too, and I cannot stand that behavior.
Well, for this demo, works great, Darren.
Yeah, you're right. It's great for this demo, but in real life, it's been bugging the hell out of me.
So if I say about LabVIEW, that one is 2019. If I say about LabVIEW over here, it's 2020. So the reason I did this is on 2020, I have the latest version, which is DQMH 5. And on 2019, I have version 4.2. Okay. And I'm going to show you Andreas' test. Andreas is a developer that uses DQMH in Europe, and he threw this test at us. And it's one of those crazy things that I don't expect anybody to do something like this, where you're starting the module, and then in parallel to starting another instance of that module, you're stopping it at the same time, and then stopping it. So I would not expect that you would do something crazy like this, but he did it. And there are 2 things that there's a reason it had always bothered us. Well, let me show you, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm going to hit run. This is incrementing iterations as I launch modules. I hit run, and then I open a menu. And what happened? Matt, what happened? No. Darren, I guess Darren already knows. Enrique, did you see what happened? No? Yeah, Chris Collier is right. UI loop locked. So the iteration is not continuing to increase. And this is bad, right? Because if an operator, imagine this is a test sequencer running, and the operator opens a menu and then goes somewhere and talks to somebody else, and he just stopped the entire production line, right? Because they left that menu open. So why does this happen? LabVIEW has a concept of the root loop. There are certain things that are higher priority, and they need to be run and addressed immediately, right? Unfortunately, the Open BI reference and the run BI method of BI server run in the root loop, as well as those menu actions. So when you open the menu, you're basically not letting the Open BI reference and the run BI method execute. Now, since the beginning, when we created DQMH, one thing that we wanted to do was to remove the this code. We were using Open BI reference and then the run BI method of BI server. And we even had a whole explanation here as to why we were using the run BI method. And I remember having code reviews with Stephen Loftus-Mercer, and Stephen Loftus-Mercer, telling us, why don't you use the starting asynchronous call? And we were not using a starting asynchronous call because we, for the singleton, we need to remember where the BI is running, and we needed to be able to know if it was idle or running. And we later found out that we could have done it with the start asynchronous call, but it wasn't as straightforward as it was with the run BI method. There was another reason why we were not happy about using run BI method. If you use Linux on a compact Rio with UI enabled, this control value set does not work. That's a bug. There's a bug report with an I that's open, has been open for about 2 years. So that was another thing that we wanted to fix. So for LabVIEW 2020 that it's running, in this case, the 5.0. When I run the Andreas test, that has the exact same code. I run it, I go open the menu, and I have to be super fast to show you that I'm not pulling the lag. The iterations continue. Okay, so how did we fix it? Well, I already gave you a clue. We went to the start module, and now we're using a start asynchronous call. Now, these got a little bit more complicated than it used to be on 4.2. On 4.2, let me go back to 4.2. On 4.2, when I started new instances, I was always getting the clone ID. And when I would stop them and run them again, I would start again with the clone ID, always at the first one, the one that ends with a 2. When we fix it for DQMH 5.0, we change it so now we have an ID that it increments starting at 1. When I stop the modules and I start running them again, the numbers keep incrementing. The reason for that is we had to do the same thing that Actor Framework does, which is leak the first reference of your clone. And Actor Framework does this thing as well. That means that we make sure that we open one BI reference for the clone and we leave it open. And that way we can guarantee that the root loop issue doesn't show up again. Now, we understand that some architects are going to be like, leaking a reference? How dare you, right? This is like, heresy. So not to worry, because we understand that is heresy for some people. Yes, how dare you? Thank you, Cyril. So we added a closed master reference. Cyril works for NeoSop. He's one of our DQMH trusted advisors. Any other DQMH trusted advisors in the audience there? Okay, so what I'm going to do is this constant here, visible label. This is what it says closed master reference, right? And the default is set to false. So I'm going to set it to true. And I'm going to run the tester first to show you the impact. So this makes it work again as 4.2, as in if I stop them all and I run them again, I always start at 1. The problem is that it also brings back the root loop issue. Okay, so it's a trade-off. But if for whatever reason you are okay with, I'd rather have this root loop issue because I know I don't have menus and I don't have that problem, and I really cannot handle the fact that you have a leaky reference, which is a single integer, is really not that bad of a deal. We give you the option to take care of it. Okay? Any questions about that?
I would just like to reiterate what Fabiola just said, that there is no practical reason you should ever have to wire a true to that input. Yes. We just put it there for those computer scientists in the audience who might complain that our framework has the potential to leak a reference, and that makes them very uncomfortable.
Yeah, but there is the big caveat, and there's some explanations on, you know, beware of really understanding what you're putting that as a true. Okay. Any questions, Aaron, on there? Or have you been answering all of them?
Yeah, I think we're good right now.
Okay. Anybody else has questions? Is John Locanis in the audience?
I think John's on vacation this week, so he didn't make it, unfortunately.
He was the one that put me through all this. Okay. All right. So I guess he's gonna watch the recording. Okay. So from current slide, and how am I doing on time? We're good. Okay. So I already showed you that. Okay. Scalability and reusability. This is another really cool video, but it also lasts like I think 6 minutes, 4 minutes. Yeah, well, let's do it. So the continuous measurement and logging example, it's a sample project template that you can have with getting started that ships with LabVIEW, and it's done using the NIQ message handler approach. And it looks like this. You have a loop for your acquisition message, a loop for your login, your event handling loop, And then where you create the queues, you create one queue for each one of your parallel loops. And they're all stored in this cluster, okay? So that's how you manage your queues. And then those queues are sent to all your parallel loops. So scalability, months go by, now you want to add a simple, wait, make it 5 single process control loops and 1 motion control loop. So what happens is you create your new loops, your libraries for your new loops. You end up having this where all your parallel loops are there. Each one of those is your parallel loops. And all of them have access to all the queues, okay? So now you have all those queues there. And when you want to send the start message to all of them, you have something crazy that starts looking like that. So what if all control processes are identical? What if the number of control processes varies? So now we're going to do the same thing, but with DQMH modules. So we have our singleton acquisition, our clonable process control, and our main. These would look like this. We can start the number of processes there, put them in a for loop, and then start all the instances that I need for the processes. And now for reusability, months go by, and now you want to use the motion control in a different project. So if you try to drag the NIQ message handler loop to a new VI, you're going to get tons of errors because the queues are unique to each project. Okay, so you're going to have issues there because that wire is incompatible, right? One has a certain number of queues, the other one has different queues. So it's not as easy as to just drag it in. And the new project only has 1 UI queue. So now I have all these hell of trying to compensate for all of them. The NIQ motion loop expects a DAC and 5 process control queues. Whether it needs to talk to them or not, it's expecting all of that. If you drag or copy a DQMH module to a new project, the only dependency that you should have is your API tester. And you can then start just calling your functions from the public API. So you get your start module, you call your synchronized module events, you wire them, and then you register for events. So we're doing a very simple VI that's going to be doing all the registering. And then we're going to put an events structure, show dynamic terminals. We're going to register for them. And then on the case of module did init, we are just going to turn an LED that it did init. And we're going to call the request, I believe, to show the panel. No, that's it. We're going to stop it. We're not going to do anything fancy. We're doing really a very simple VI. But I was able to go create a new project and start calling the code immediately without having to go through all that linkage and dependency hell that we got with the NIQMH. So if we run this, we get that it did initialize and it stopped without problem. All right. Any questions, comments? No. Okay, so I already talked about this. If all you want to need is acquire and log, definitely you don't need DQMH. You can do everything with NIQMH. Yes, Poquitos. Enrique, did you know that we actually own Poquitos.com and it forwards to Delacor? We haven't figured out what to do with it. For people out there, Poquitos, I know when I pronounce it, it sounds like I'm saying a bad word, but it is little LEDs or little lights in Spanish. Okay, so the challenge is parallel loops cannot be loaded at different times. Parallel loops cannot be restarted. If application grows, can get unruly. Finding where a message was in queue can only be done by text search. Okay, so why do we use user events for inter-DQMH communication? This was another one of the questions that John Locanis had. Broadcast makes it easier to send messages to the world. It doesn't matter if there are listeners or not. This is my biggest pet peeve with queues. If I create a queue, but there's no DQer, the memory will keep growing. But if I create an event and I fire the event and nobody is registered to listen to the event, there's no memory increase, right? It just stays there. So that's why I like events. An event queue is created for each listener. If no listeners, no event queue is created. Events in the same event queue do not have to have the same data type. That's another great thing. That means edit time errors versus runtime errors. External events, GUI interactions, or communication from other modules are separated from internal communication. Possibility of temporarily unregistering from an event. This is something that I love. We have used it very randomly, but you can do that. And the event handling loop serves to marshal the information to the message handling loop. And we could probably spend a whole day telling you how great events are. So I think that was mainly what I wanted to cover, and I probably already went over, or I'm about to go over the hour. We went digging in onto really old computers to see if we could recover the code that Jack Dunaway showed in 2013, and we were able to find it thanks to Darren that found a very, very old computer that had the code and sent it to me. And this was presented at the Paris CLA Summit in 2013. So if I look at the one that I wanted to show you is this one. So you have heard that user events are kind of slow. Generally, user events are indeed not as performance as queues, yet they are unlikely to be a performance bottleneck in your application. So what we're going to be looking at is this crazy thing that he did, where he was publishing many events, high events, number of events per second. And then on the bottom, he was publishing large events, but so it's more like you're doing really, really high value. So he's doing the entire image here at a time, where here he's just doing a little bit at a time. So if I run this thing, you see our friend from the office showing up. And you can see that both go pretty well. I have two event structures running in parallel. So the main thing about this is, whenever you hear that queues are faster, yes, it's true. But for most of the applications that we have, events have been enough. When somebody asks me how performant is DQMH, my answer is normally performance is not something that you need to worry about on a message system. And our approach is we make the entire message application work. And then we identify the DQMH module that needs to be more performant, and we make changes to that DQMH module. We have an application that has about 30 DQMH modules, and only one, that's the one that's doing the data acquisition, needed to be modified. So instead of having an event structure, it had a queue. We have another application for another customer where we are acquiring 2 giga samples per second, and sending the 2 giga samples to the array would have been crazy. So what we did instead is we have a buffer, we use queues, we use DVRs, we use all sorts of combinations. But again, it's a single DQMH module. It still keeps its EHL and its MHL, its event handling loop and its message handling loop. But the helper loop uses queues instead of events. Questions about this? No? So there is another benchmark that he did. And by the way, I was planning on presenting at NI Week a revamp of this presentation, demystifying user events, because there's tons of bad information going out there. But for now, let's just check this one. So what we're doing here is it's incrementing the numbers, and it's comparing both having messages with a queue and messages using user events. And the message is super small. It's just a string that is being sent in both. And he compares publishing speed. You can see here it's both in milliseconds, and it starts to, the queue here is 510 milliseconds, versus events that is 264. So in this case, in publishing radio, events is better than queues. Handling speed, the queue takes 61 milliseconds, the events take 158 milliseconds. The overall speed, so publish plus handle, the queue is 14 microseconds, the event is 10 microseconds. So these values are going to change depending on the test parameters that you use. And like I said, the dummy is just this. So in this particular case, they're very comparable. Now, again, when you start getting into larger data sets, it might be different. What we have found out is that if you want to broadcast it to the array, for example, it's just better to wrap it with a DVR, but you can still send it with an event if you need to. All right, so enough of me talking. Questions, comments? Antoine, it used to be the benchmark code, it used to be in GitHub. We discovered today that that GitHub page from Jack no longer exists. And this is why I want to do something about creating a new version of that presentation. But send me a message and we can see what we can do to get you the code. Okay. Okay.
We do have a question in the chat, which I've been trying to answer, but this may be better to answer out loud. Basically, so here I'll just read word for word from the chat. A situation where two modules confirm registration of a broadcasting module. There could be a scenario where one module gets the broadcast while the other does not because it is still spinning up initializing. And I was about to start typing out a whole long response, but I'll let you take over here.
Yeah, that doesn't happen on DQMH, John. That was one of the things that we made sure we were addressing. So let me go to LabVIEW 2020 and look at our tester. Test minion. Okay, well, let's do the Seattle, not the just to keep it into singletons. When I click on the start module, see this VI here, it says synchronize module events. So what this is doing is you start the module, you register for broadcast from the module, and then you say, I will hear until the module tells me that they're ready. And then if you go to the Seattle module itself inside the main VI, oh, it stayed pink, sorry about that, the magenta. In the initialization here, we create our broadcast, our requests. We register for the requests here, okay? And then it's until we get to the initialize, here we synchronize caller events. So at this point, it's what it's called a rendezvous. So all my code, the one that I showed you that was waiting here for the synchronization, these VI and these VI meet at the same place. And at this point, I know the main VI, the Seattle main VI is ready, has already registered to receive requests. And my calling code has already registered to receive broadcasts. And this guarantees that we don't miss any messages. Does that answer your question, John? Maybe you're muted, John, so make sure you can unmute.
Hey, yeah, sorry, jumping in. I was posting in the chat, figured this is probably faster. I think that does explain it for one module paying attention to another module that is broadcasting. I think the question that I have is about two modules that are both trying to listen for the same broadcast of one other module. That rendezvous makes sense for a listener and a broadcaster, but if there's two listeners and maybe that first listener says, hey, I'm ready to listen, and the broadcasting module sends out a broadcast, but the second module did not say, hey, I'm ready to start listening as well. I guess I can only guarantee that one of those modules will actually hear the broadcasting module's broadcast.
So one of the things in that case, when you run the start module, if the module was already running, we have these requests that says get module execution status. So what you can do on the second listener, is you would register for the update module execution status.
Okay.
And that,
gotcha.
and then when you get here, then you would register here for the broadcasts of that message, of that.
Okay, so I just need to kind of chain it up a little bit to make sure that
Yes.
all those listeners are able to hear. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah, but definitely that was one of the things that we spent the longest time figuring out, because that's another problem that the Q message, that the NIQMH has, that you can get into a situation where you can fire and queue something before you're ready. So if you go and look at, well, DQMH 1 never really made it to the public, but if you look at the very early versions of DQMH, we had several self-enqueues on the initialize, and we got rid of them because of that, because we needed to make sure that we could handle everything atomically. Right.
Gotcha. Yep.
And everybody was ready. Yeah.
That makes sense. I appreciate you running through that.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any questions about? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about the status updated VI. Mostly because I tend to just kind of sprinkle that on a lot of the new like cases that I create, especially if I like script a message. But I notice it doesn't kind of like automatically get added to any new cases that are scripted. Is there something I should be like worried about putting that in too many places?
No,
or
you can put it you can actually have in several places within the same case. We use it as a debugger, right? As a printf, if you wish, in text-based programming. So you can put it everywhere you want it. One thing people can do, and let me actually this is a good opportunity to show why would you create your own template. So let's say that the Seattle main,
While you're bringing that up, I'll just point out to Matt that I have worked on projects, DQMH projects before, where there were too many status updateds, and I had to scroll through the status string on the tester to the point where it got irritating how many status updates were in there. So yeah, you can overdo it. I will just give that quick warning.
Oh yeah, well,
yeah, you can overdo everything. All right, so let's say that this Seattle thing is going to be our template, because we really like that it was Ctrl-Shift-E. Where am I? Items. Okay. That we really like it that it was that color of blue, and on the block diagram we are going to change that color of blue here as well. And normally you would do things like change this to be a class and do other changes, but we're only going to do that change, and we're going to change the status updated since you brought it up. And status updated, and we're going to change it to include the time. Okay, and so let's do that. Why did I choose that? That's okay. Let's see if I don't. This is why I always record my demos, because I'm gonna do something stupid. Okay, so that's how you're supposed to do it, right? And then H. Let's say you have it like that, and we are going to concatenate that. Oh, I already had it here, so I guess I can just add that.
I think you need a % before the F.
Yes, thank you. See, this is why I normally. Okay, so that guy now is going to go here. The module name is going to go here. And the timestamp is going to go here. Okay. So let's say you want all the, so what I did with this is if I go to the tester for Seattle, now when I run and I get my messages, I'm actually going to get the timestamp on when the status message got there. So let's say that that's a change you want, and you want all your modules to have that. And again, I'm making a very simple thing. You can now go to Tools, Delacor, DQMH module, and you can say, I want to create a DQMH module template. And You can go to Seattle. Where am I on that? No, I don't think I'm on that one. Let me make sure that I know where I'm at. So Seattle, explore. I don't know where I'm at. All right, what do you see? There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna go tools, Delacor, DQMH module, create DQMH module template. And here's gonna happen something weird because I press that and it's gonna tell me that the thing that I selected is not a DQMH module. I actually have to click there, then go there, click the leave, and now it's gonna validate it. Okay, and then you put a description here, super duper Seattle, well, just let's say a SLUG, Seattle LabVIEW user group meeting module template. I'm just gonna put it on the LabVIEW data under SLUG. And there's a current path here. You know, we can talk about that. That's if you don't like to rely on the template being in LabVIEW data, but you want to rely on the template being in an external, if you're in Subversion, or in a sub-repository if you're in Git, you could use the other option. And it tells you it's basically putting it in user, Delacor documents, LabVIEW data, DQMH module templates under SLUG, okay? So when I do that, if I go and create a blank project, and let's save this project in here. So new folder, demo template, DQMH template, no LabVIEW template. Okay. Okay, and then the project DQMH, well, okay, on title. So I'm gonna go to tools, Delacor, DQMH module, and new DQMH module. And now here, I'm gonna have the option of using, where is it? Seattle, super duper SLUG module template. If you had put any other description, that's what would show up here. And when you run it, notice that I'm calling it module 1. So the scripting tools are looking for all the places where it said Seattle and is replacing it with the words module 1. So when you were running the Seattle module, everything would say Seattle. Now, when I go to the tester, it already comes with the change from panel color. When I start the module and I show it, it has the name module 1. So even the window name got changed. And it already comes with my little change here. When I go to the block diagram, it has a little blue color that we had given it. And as you can see on the tester, the timestamp also made it part of the template. So once you find what are the pet peeves that you don't like about how we did our template, and you want to make modifications, you can make your own modifications and then create your DQMH modules from your template, not from ours. All right. If you wanted to package these and share it with others, you can go to BI Package Manager and share it there. And remember, I told you was in Documents, LabVIEW data, and then Delacor. Where are they? DQMH templates. I should have copied that. DQMH module templates. Source, SLUG, Seattle. Everything is copied here. That's the source. And on the metadata, it created this XML that gives you all the stuff that we put in there. So you can change things here. All right. So that's the part of you can customize as much as you want your the DQMH module. We really made it where you can extend it a lot. And we are still missing things. We can still make it better. There is, well, that's the batch thing. If you go to ni.com and look for the Delacor Toolkit discussions, there is, under Delacor Toolkits, there is a feature request. It's like the idea exchange. So you can put feature requests there. All right. I think I've shown you everything. I don't know if there's any other questions. We already talked about API tester. Somebody was asking what's next. We're going to be implementing some features from the DQMH request. The one that I'm the most excited about is we are trying to figure out how to report where the error came from. So it will give you which message case or which event loop it came from. So that's the one that I'm the most excited about. There are others coming along. I know that Darren had some feature requests too that are making it into 5.1. Darren, do you remember any of the ones that you asked for that I already told you that are getting implemented?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. Whenever I script a new broadcast event, I always manually copy the code in the tester event structure that adds the string to the front panel. And that code, my request was that we automatically script that code in the tester when you're making a new broadcast. And that idea has been accepted.
Yeah. All right. The other thing I guess I haven't shown is the validate. So we understand that you're doing, like, when you tell us, okay, I'm going to be using your code, right? You're trusting a whole deal of stuff with us. So let me go back to the 19 code. Let me see where this is saved. Explore. And I'm going to make a copy of this one of the 0.2. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to open it on 5.0 on LabVIEW 2020 under the 5.0. So if I go to LabVIEW 2020, file, open project, and I open the copy. Okay. So this was saved using DQMH 4.2, right? If I go to the Control H here, that's the API tester, but the main BI, it's going to tell me that it was done using 4.2. But we're on 2020 where I have DQMH 5.0 installed. So I can go to Delacor DQMH module, validate DQMH module, and it's going to tell me all the things that changed between 4.2 and 5.0, and it's going to give me the option of fixing them. So it explains why, and then if I click the fix issue, it will take care of it and replace all the things that I need for it to work. So I don't have to, and you guys can spend time. This is also in the documentation, and there's a video about it. So I'm not gonna. There's the run BI method that we talked about, and the tester, now the stuff is conditionally called. So there's that. So if I rescan, I should have that everything passes. So that's all I had to do to update it to behave like DQMH 5.0. So the Andreas test should now work, and it works, right? That's why I made it 200, because it's too fast. Right. So all I had to do was say, install DQMH 5, validate my code, and I no longer have the issue of the root loop. Okay. Yeah, the Hample software engineer has really, really cool templates, and they have done the whole thing of having their own child queue and all that stuff. I think I cannot believe this, but I think I have covered everything. Is there anything else you guys have questions about? No questions? Everybody fell asleep? Thank you,
Derek
Ben.
Derek wants to know if DQMH is going to be published on GPM.
Derek, first I need to bring the MGI panels that for DQMH to 5.0. I'm going to give a help to David Moore to doing that. Then I will bug you on what we need to do to get it into GPM. Last time I checked that, I thought there was a lot of work and I just didn't want to do it. But I'll promise you, once I get the MGI panels upgraded to 5.0, I'll ping you. One more thing for those of you, if you did get the book, a lot of people don't know that there is companion code. It's on GitHub. Is the resources. There's the errata there. As we were writing the book, so it's the 5th edition. There's a lot of code that was from the previous editions, but anything that was new code, as we were writing the code for the book, we were committing it to here. So there's a lot of places on the book that it says, you know, go to the tag X, so you can see what the code looked like at that point, and then you can keep checking out as the book progresses on talking about the code. You can actually see at what stage the code was when that part of the book was written. So. All right, anything else? Oh, Justin Cooper, I got the right NHL team color. Huh. I'm just gonna say, yes, I did my homework.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I can tell.
Michael, you wanna share your experience with bringing people different levels of expertise to use DQMH? You're muted. You need to mute.
Oh, yeah, that's really interesting. I think a lot of it, I think I talked to you about that before when I first started coming up with a new architecture for our group in Advanced Bionics. We were all of different levels, and we had one guy that was extremely good with software engineering, and and then there was the rest of us. So when we came up with this, I started looking at the actor framework, and it had all the things that we wanted, but it was a little hard for everybody to digest. It was difficult, and so when I read the article about the DQMH, I went home and I built some things with it, and I said, yeah, this is, as I told everybody, I call it the wheel, because it really was the glue for a lot of the things that we needed in our architecture. So with that, I was able to get a whole group of people from, that were have the skills of architects all the way down to newbies, and able to onboard them and get them to develop within our system comfortably and quickly. And so, yeah, it's still one of my favorite tools to use in developing architectures.
Thank you. I did not pay Michael to say that. And Enrique, I don't know if Enrique is still around, but he's teaching it to engineering students in Mexico. So, anybody else? Any question? I see some messages. It seems like people like the presentation, so it's good. Yes, and T2, go for it.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me, Fabiola?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, just to introduce, I've been using now DQMH for a little over 2 years, and I was alone on the team using DQMH. Now we are 4 using it, and I'm the architect in the 4, and the thing that I spend most of my time as the architect of 4 people working with a project with now about 10 different DQMH modules, 3 of which are clonable, is making sure that everyone follows the architecture, the dependencies between modules that we have defined at the beginning, and making sure that no one is introducing unwanted dependencies between modules. And I was wondering if you have any good ways or recommendation on how to check that a module doesn't have unwanted dependencies with other modules.
Yeah, the quickest way is you open a blank project and you dock your module there, and then go and look at what's in the dependency.
That's exactly what I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
For each module, I have a project which I call module name _ dependencies.
Yeah.
And I have that module, and I always go and check the dependencies. And every time I do that, I go and talk to my guys. Hey, you've introduced something.
Yeah. And sometimes it's okay. The example I give is the configuration editor that we have. The configuration editor is a singleton, and the pages that get inserted into the configuration editor are clonables. And those two modules will always work together. So we have circular dependencies there, but that's fine because they will never work separately.
It's just at the start.
Yeah.
When we define all the modules and the interactions, we define which modules can interact with which other modules, and then you have dependencies, cross dependencies, and in some cases it's fine, but you don't want more than what you agreed when you did the design, and that's the thing that I find myself checking a lot on different branches of our repo, and I do that a lot. That's why I was wondering if there's good advice on how to do that.
Yeah. The second thing that you can do is Olivier Jourdain from Wobble Lab in France. There, your neighbor almost. Relative to me, right? Olivier Jourdain has an open source project that's called Anti-Doc, and it generates diagrams of your DQMH modules, and it shows all the requests and the broadcasts, and what are the relationships between your modules, like who's calling the request of a module within your project. So that's another good way to check it, because it's visual. You get the diagram.
I need to work on that with Olivier, because I think it took like 2 hours for his code to analyze our project. So I don't know. Maybe the problem is not his code, but our project.
Well, we do have the project that has 30 DQMH modules. It took about an hour. But what we're looking at is to putting it in the continuous integration. So when it builds overnight, it would also build the documentation. So it wouldn't be something that you would be doing every time, but you would want it to be current as to the last. Maybe before you allow a build, you run it to make sure that nobody's introducing those circular dependencies. But that's another way. But the fastest is just adding the DQMH module to a project, to a clean project.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, going on the continuous integration stuff, we did something kind of similar for decaf, where one of our tests during commit was to script a new project and then put our code into that project and then manually check dependencies for in that one though, we were checking for very specific classes that we didn't want in dependencies. It might be hard with DQMH because it is just kind of like a library. So I think it might be hard to distinguish you pulled in another DQMH library versus you just pulled in some MGI library that's perfectly acceptable. I don't know if there's a way to identify that this library is a DQMH module.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, so maybe you could do something like that, where you script it, and that's a test for commit.
Yeah, and that's and that would be something. If we do have BIs that identify what library is a DQMH module. That's how Olivier Jourdain is doing the Anti-Doc. He goes and finds all the LV leaves that are recognized as DQMH modules. So yeah, there could be ways to do that. To script your project that will check if there are unacceptable dependencies. James Terry, you said that. Thank you for the yes, you do need espresso. I should have mentioned that at the beginning of the presentation. I already speak fast, and when I get nervous or excited, which I'm both right now, I go even faster. They're recording the presentation, so hopefully when you watch the video, you can go to the preferences and slow me down. I've heard people say that they normally watch YouTube videos, 2x, but when they watch my videos, they put me on 0.5 speed. So sorry. Stanislav. Stanislav, we're not using any project providers. No project providers. There is, if you go to the, if you go here to the discussions, there is a project provider that somebody else did from Sulky that allows you to call the things directly from the project, but that's not us. Let me see, project provider. There it is. Project Explorer menu for DQMH. So if that's, if you want to be able to right click directly on the project and get the menu right there, you can use their tool. We try as much as possible to keep compatible with that tool, and the Sulky team, it's on our beta access list, so they can address any changes when we have new versions. But we do not have we do not use project providers, Stanislav. Actually, and you can see our stuff is on the tools menu, and having these Delacor on the tools menu, all we had to do is when we install the package, if you go to C, program files, national instruments, LabVIEW 2020, and go to the project, Delacor, this is where all the tools for DQMH are. Okay, and the project template is under project templates. And if we go to metadata, there's the Delacor QMH. And if you go to the source, Delacor QMH, we have these README where we tell you where we went online to learn how to make project templates. So the stuff is in there. All right. Other cool stuff that I didn't show. If you create a project from the continuous measurement and login example, where is the continuous? Let me go to Delacor. CML. Okay, CML, continuous measurement and login example. And let's do these on Seattle. Okay. These can be built as an executable out of the box, and it already has code to implement debuggers. So that's another reason to install DQMH. Even if you're not going to be using DQMH, you can copy this code. Okay, so let's build it. Build. So that's gonna, yeah, I'm super afraid of project providers, to be honest. Like, I just don't want to deal with it. I think Darren doesn't like them either.
Your fears are well founded.
Okay, so if I explore this executable and I run it, it runs the code, and I can, start the acquisition, stop the acquisition, and exiting. But if I run the CML main from the code, I have this BI. That BI was not showing up, not even on the taskbar, as I was running the executable. So what's happening? I can go to a CMD, to a command prompt, and then drag into there my executable, and then do --debug. And what that's going to do is it is opening, but it's opening in debugging mode. So what that means is I can stop this and start my module again without having to restart the executable. So how did we do that? It's part of the build specification. We have a pre-build action BI. That pre-build action BI is here on launcher support, so you can go find it out. And then on the CML main, we also explain what's going on this label here. And one of the things that you can do on the debugger is you could add buttons to launch the testers, for example. So let's say that you want that button, and let's launch one of the testers. So we're going to launch. I don't even remember what modules we have here. Modules. So let's say we want to add one for the acquisition. So launch. I should be using the DMC buttons since they are local to you guys. I'm turning off. Okay, so let's add a new event case, and then take the launch acquisition tester, bring that one here, start a synchronous call, and then normally what I do is I go there, go to the detail help, and then open the example and copy that to make sure that I have it right. Where is my examples? Open example, call and forget, open example. Okay, Windows show block diagram. So I can copy all these things. And of course, I want to call the tester, not whatever this thing is. So Ctrl-Shift-E, look for my API testers, and I want the one for the acquisition. So bring this guy here. I think that's all I need to do. Oh, no, one more thing. I need to drag that to the connector frame. Okay. So what that's going to do is when I run this guy, I can launch the API tester. Probably need to show it its run panel. Where's the tester? VI properties. Windows appearance. Customized. Show from panel with calls. Okay. That should work. Hopefully. See, this is what happens when I go out of script. Okay, start module, launch application tester. There we go. Okay, so now that I have that, I should be able to build these again, and then use the debugger as a real debugger where I could insert things and stuff. Okay. So explore, drag to the CMD. So this is something that we do in a lot of our applications. So if I want to see, I have something that I need to debug specifically to the acquisition, I could be running the API tester from here. The nice thing about that is that I can also insert things. So I can make things happen from the API tester and see how that affects my main application. So sometimes that comes really handy when you're debugging corner cases. All right, any other questions? You know, I should have said Eric Raffet is in the room. So if you have any questions about NXG, he will be more than happy to answer them.
He would, but you were flooring him with LabVIEW, and I'm fine with that too.
All right, any other questions? No, I think he really likes the LabVIEW talk, Derek. I don't think he's being sarcastic.
Yeah, the only sarcasm that I was injecting in there was Derek's ginormous link post, which I think he deleted now.
Oh.
No, it's still in there. It goes on for like 12 scrolls. It's cool.
Yeah, the diagrams, I don't know if I have, I don't think I have on this one, the tool from the ASCII doc connected, but I could show you a preview of a post that's going to be published next week that that Olivier created, and he has a little picture of the documentation. So let me do that while you think about other questions. VPN. Am I connected? Yes, I am connected.
Hey,
Post.
this is Derek here. So that whole like it takes an hour to generate the stuff. I think I probably got the back end to solve that on the not the mega link, but one of the links I posted above. So I'd be stoked to work with Olivier.
It's open source, so you totally can do that.
Yeah.
Antidoc is open source. So this is going to be coming up next week, but this is the type of diagrams that it generates. Okay. So it's pretty cool. Let me give you the link of the GitLab, Derek, so you can get in touch with Olivier. All right. Okay, you guys, I can keep talking, so you tell me. Done. No more, please. You're crying, uncle. Where is my Teams? There it is. There's the GitLab for Antidoc. Yeah, Eric, and that interactive debugging that I showed for the API tester, that you can also do with Testan. So if you're calling DQMH modules from Testan, you can put on your tools menu, when you customize your tools menu on Testan, you can customize it to call the API testers for your code in Testan. And you can do that thing about inserting errors or inserting faults, which comes really handy on Testan because you don't have to destroy units under test in order to test if your sequencer is working fine.
That usually seems like a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Darren. I guess he already left, but that was awesome that he helped. All right, so it seems that people are starting to leave. So if there are no any other questions. Matt, were you checking the chat after Darren left? I don't see anything, so I think we have covered all.
Yeah, I think.
Eric Graffett, Justin, did I cover everything that we discussed last week and then some?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks so much, Fabiola. This is a great presentation. I might just go ahead and stop the recording unless anyone wants to sneak in another question under the wire. Okay, I'm gonna stop it, I think. Thanks everyone, and thanks for staying late.